Hello friends, how are you? Shall we start our class today? So let's go. Clara sat by the window, her breath fogging up the glass as she stared at the rain-soaked streets below. The world outside seemed as gray and lifeless as she felt inside. Another day, another routine. Work, home, sleep, repeat. It was a cycle she couldn't break, no matter how hard she tried. She sighed, pulling her knees to her chest. The apartment was quiet, save for the rhythmic tapping of rain against the pane. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made her thoughts louder, more insistent. "I just want something to change," she whispered to no one in particular. Her voice was barely audible, but the words felt heavy, as if they carried a weight she couldn't quite understand. It wasn't a prayer, not really. Clara hadn't believed in anything, not fate, not the universe, not even herself, for a long time. But in that moment, something inside her cracked open. A desperate, unspoken plea rose from the depths of her heart. "I don't care what it is. Just make it different. Make me different." The words hung in the air, suspended like the raindrops clinging to the window. For a brief moment, the room seemed to grow colder, the silence deepening. Clara shivered, pulling her sweater tighter around her shoulders. She didn't know why she'd said it. Maybe it was the loneliness, the monotony, or the crushing weight of a life that felt like it wasn't truly hers. Whatever it was, the wish had been made. And somewhere in the vast, unseen fabric of the universe, something stirred. Clara stood, shaking off the strange chill that had settled over her. She glanced at the clock. It was almost midnight. Time to sleep, to forget this moment and return to the same old routine tomorrow. But as she turned off the lights and climbed into bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something small, almost imperceptible, but undeniably real. The universe had heard her, and it was about to answer. The next morning, Clara woke to the sound of her alarm blaring. She groaned, slapping the snooze button with more force than necessary. The room was still dark, the rain from the night before replaced by an eerie stillness. As she shuffled to the kitchen to make coffee, something felt off. The air was heavier, charged with an energy she couldn't quite place. She brushed it off as fatigue, pouring herself a cup and leaning against the counter. That's when she noticed it. Her favorite mug, the one with the tiny crack in the handle, was gone. She frowned, opening cabinets and scanning the shelves. It wasn't there. She was sure she'd left it in the sink the night before. "Weird," she muttered, grabbing a different mug. The strangeness didn't end there. On her way to work, the bus driver, a man she'd seen every day for years, greeted her by name. Except she was certain they'd never spoken before. His smile was too knowing, his eyes lingering on her a beat too long. At the office, things were even more bizarre. Her coworker, Lisa, handed her a file without being asked, saying, "I figured you'd need this today." Clara stared at her, confused. She hadn't mentioned anything about the file to anyone. By lunchtime, Clara's unease had grown into full-blown paranoia. She sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen, when an email popped up. The subject line read, "You asked for this." Her heart skipped a beat. She clicked it open, but the message was blank. Just a single symbol, a spiral like a galaxy spinning endlessly. Clara slammed her laptop shut, her hands trembling. This was too much. Coincidences were one thing, but this felt deliberate. As she packed up to leave, her phone buzzed. An unknown number had sent her a text. "Be careful what you wish for." The words sent a chill down her spine. Something was coming, and it was coming for her. Clara spent the rest of the day on edge, jumping at every sound, every flicker of movement. The text message had shaken her to her core. Who could have sent it? And how did they know about her wish? She decided to walk home, hoping the crisp evening air would clear her mind. The streets were quieter than usual, the usual hum of the city replaced by an unsettling silence. Her footsteps echoed against the pavement, each one a reminder of how alone she felt. That's when she saw him. A man stood under a flickering street lamp, his silhouette sharp against the dim light. He was tall, dressed in a long black coat that seemed to blend into the shadows. His face was partially obscured, but Clara could feel his gaze on her, intense and unyielding. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding. But as she passed him, he spoke. "Clara." Her name rolled off his tongue like a secret, something intimate and dangerous. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The man stepped into the light, revealing piercing blue eyes and a faint scar running down his left cheek. He looked familiar, though Clara couldn't place where she'd seen him before. "I'm here to help you," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You made a wish, didn't you?" Clara's stomach dropped. "How do you know that?" He ignored her question, stepping closer. "The universe heard you. But wishes, they're not as simple as they seem. There are consequences, Clara. Rules." She backed away, her instincts screaming at her to run. But something about him, his presence, his certainty, rooted her to the spot. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. The man's expression softened, just for a moment. "I want to show you the truth. About your wish. About yourself." Before she could respond, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small, ornate box. It was ancient, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to shift and shimmer in the light. "This," he said, holding it out to her, "is where it begins." Clara hesitated, her hand hovering over the box. And then, against her better judgment, she took it. The box felt heavier in Clara's hands than it looked, as though it carried the weight of something far beyond its size. The man, who still hadn't given her his name, led her to a nearby park, where they sat on a bench under the pale glow of a crescent moon. "Open it," he said, his voice low but insistent. Clara's fingers trembled as she traced the intricate carvings on the box's surface. The symbols seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. She hesitated, glancing at the man. "What's inside?" she asked. "Answers," he replied simply. With a deep breath, she lifted the lid. Inside was a small, shimmering orb no larger than a marble. It glowed with a soft, ethereal light, casting strange shadows on her hands. "What is this?" she whispered. "A memory," the man said. "One of many. Touch it." Clara hesitated again, but curiosity overpowered her fear. She reached out and brushed her fingertip against the orb. The world around her dissolved in an instant. She was no longer in the park. Instead, she stood in a bustling marketplace, the air thick with the scent of spices and the sound of voices speaking a language she didn't recognize. The people around her wore clothes from another era, long robes, intricate jewelry, and sandals. And then she saw her, a woman who looked exactly like Clara but different. Her hair was braided with gold threads, her eyes sharp and determined. She stood at the center of the marketplace, arguing with a man whose face was obscured by a hood. "You don't understand what you're asking for," the man said, his voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "I understand perfectly," the woman, Clara's past self, replied. "I want control over my fate. I'm tired of being a pawn in this endless game." The man sighed, pulling a scroll from his robes. "Very well. But know this, every choice has a price. Every wish a consequence." Clara watched as her past self signed the scroll, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. The man vanished, and the marketplace faded into darkness. She gasped, jolting back to the present. The orb in the box had dimmed, its light fading. That was me," Clara stammered, her mind reeling. The man nodded. "You made a pact long ago. A deal with forces beyond your understanding. The wish you made last night, it wasn't the first. And it won't be the last." Clara's heart raced. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, his voice grave, "that your fate has always been tied to this. And now it's time to face it." Clara stared at the man, her mind spinning. The memory, or vision, or whatever it was, had left her feeling unmoored, as if the ground beneath her had shifted. "So what now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "Now you have a choice to make. The universe has granted your wish, but it demands something in return." Clara's stomach churned. What kind of choice? He hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. "You must decide between two paths. One will save someone you love. The other will ensure your own happiness. But you cannot have both." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. "What are you talking about? Who do I have to save?" The man's expression softened, but there was no comfort in it. "Someone from your past. Someone whose life has been intertwined with yours across lifetimes. If you choose to save them, you will lose the chance to break the cycle of pain and regret that has followed you. If you choose your own happiness, they will be lost forever." Clara's mind raced. She thought of her mother, who had passed away years ago. Her best friend Mia, who had always been there for her. Even the man sitting in front of her, who felt strangely familiar, as if she had known him for lifetimes. "How am I supposed to choose?" she demanded, her voice cracking. "This isn't fair." "It was never meant to be fair," the man replied. "This is the consequence of your wish. The universe doesn't give without taking." Clara buried her face in her hands, the weight of the decision crushing her. How could she choose between someone she loved and her own chance at happiness? It felt impossible, cruel. The man reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have much time. The longer you wait, the harder it will be." Clara looked up, tears streaming down her face. "What happens if I don't choose?" "Then the choice will be made for you," he said quietly. "And you may not like the outcome." The park around them seemed to grow darker, the shadows stretching longer. Clara felt the weight of the box in her lap, the orb inside now cold and lifeless. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. The man's gaze was steady, unwavering. "You already do. You just have to listen to your heart." But Clara wasn't sure she could trust her heart. Not when it felt like it was being torn in two. Clara sat in silence, the weight of the impossible choice pressing down on her. The man beside her was patient, his presence both comforting and unnerving. She stared at the box in her hands, the orb now dull and lifeless, as if it had served its purpose. "I need to know who I'm saving," she said finally, her voice firm despite the turmoil inside her. "If I'm going to make this choice, I need to understand." The man hesitated, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded. "Very well. But be warned, what you're about to see may change everything." He reached into his coat and pulled out another orb, this one glowing faintly with a golden light. He placed it in her hands, and the moment her skin touched it, the world around her dissolved once more. This time she found herself in a small, dimly lit room. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and the walls were lined with books and strange artifacts. In the center of the room stood a woman, herself but older, her face lined with weariness and regret. The older Clara was speaking to someone, her voice trembling with emotion. "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep losing them. There has to be another way." The camera, or whatever perspective Clara was seeing this from, panned to the person she was speaking to. It was the man from the park, his face etched with sorrow. "There is no other way," he said softly. "This is the price of the pact. You knew that when you made it." The older Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't understand. I didn't know it would be like this." The man stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "You have one last chance to break the cycle, but it will require the ultimate sacrifice." The scene shifted again, and Clara saw herself, her current self, standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind whipping through her hair. The man was there too, his hand outstretched. "Jump," he said, "and it will all be over. The cycle will be broken." Clara gasped, pulling her hand away from the orb. The vision faded, and she was back in the park, her heart pounding. "That was me," she whispered, staring at the man. "But it was also you. You're me, aren't you? Or a version of me." The man's expression softened, and for the first time she saw the pain in his eyes. "Yes," he said quietly. "I'm you from another time, another life. I've been trying to guide you, to help you avoid the mistakes I made." Clara's mind reeled. "So this choice, it's not just about saving someone else. It's about saving myself." He nodded. "The cycle of pain and regret can only end if you choose to let go. But it's not an easy choice. It never is." Clara looked down at the box, her hands trembling. The weight of the decision felt heavier than ever, but for the first time she understood. The choice wasn't just about sacrifice. It was about freedom. Clara stood at the edge of the park, the city skyline glowing faintly in the distance. The box was still in her hands, but it felt lighter now, as if it had released its hold on her. The man, her other self, stood beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now," he said, "you make the choice. But remember, it's not just about what you lose. It's about what you gain." Clara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She thought about the visions she'd seen, the lifetimes of pain and regret, the endless cycle of wishes and consequences. She thought about the people she loved, the ones she'd lost, and the ones she might still save. And then she thought about herself. When she opened her eyes, her decision was clear. "I choose to let go," she said, her voice steady. "I choose to break the cycle." The man smiled, a look of relief and pride crossing his face. "Then it's done." He reached out, taking the box from her hands. As he did, the orb inside began to glow once more, its light growing brighter and brighter until it enveloped them both. Clara felt a warmth spread through her, a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. When the light faded, the man was gone. The box was gone. And Clara was alone. But she didn't feel alone. She took a step forward, then another, her footsteps light and sure. The city around her seemed brighter, more alive, as if it had been waiting for her to see it this way. For the first time in a long time, Clara felt free. The universe had answered her wish, not by giving her what she thought she wanted, but by showing her what she needed. And as she walked into the night, she knew that whatever came next, she was ready. The cycle was broken, and her new beginning had just begun.